So I was going to do a shop talk video on this one because working on this guy, which is basically just your compact, but mixing it up a little bit, throwing on the corkscrew. And wanted to make one of these for a while, but I didn't have one of these. And, you know, I talk about these things all the time. And then, I don't know if I call him a buddy or I call him an enabler, because someone named Hitchpost got me onto one of these. So this is the ISC. They branded it as Century. And they made these knives like early 90s. So it's actually a pretty nice little knife because it's basically an apprentice in a 91 millimeter, which in my opinion should be the base layer of all your knives, really. You just add, if you like 3 layers or less, because you're just going to take this, add whatever you want, right? For a pair of scissors on there, maybe just like this guy over here, I just put a metal saw in there, perfect. But you're like, all right, well, are these parts interchangeable? Surprisingly, they are pretty much identical. So this company either worked in conjunction with the same factory or someone ripped them off, because you can't tell the difference. There's some slight differences, and I'll show you here, but I mean, Victorinox blade here, it's a little banged up. ISC blade. So this one's a little more rounded, but quality-wise, thickness, pretty much the same. The combo tool, so this is what I'm building it, is slightly different. So this is a real one. See how it's got that little, how it angles down. This one doesn't, it's basically flat. But it's pretty close. I mean, I don't think it's going to have any noticeable impact at all. And the cool thing is, it lets me build one of these guys. Now, even the liners, you can't tell the difference. Pins are exactly the same. So your end pins are 2.5 millimeter, 2.2 here. That's their bushings that they used. I mean, it's funny because they're not as flush. I think it's a thing to focus. Like it's a little different, but the bushing itself, brass bushing, is identical. The only thing I noticed was when I drilled these out, it came out like quickly. So I don't know if I'm just better at drilling these things, or I got the sense that the brass was not as good. And it almost looks like it's a different color. Maybe it's not even brass. If you can see that. But it was definitely a lot easier to drill these things out. But what's cool is still reuse these bushings. So that's what I'm doing this knife. It's got these bushings. It's going to be fine. I don't see a problem at all. So I'm pretty excited about these. You know, and as far as like modding and building these things, nothing original I'm going to say here, but there's plenty of stuff, especially on multi-tool forum if you want to get into this. But the brass pins is a big pain because the end pins are 2.5 on the 91 millimeters or 2.5 millimeters. And you can buy this stuff on Amazon, hardware stores carry it, not a big deal. But these are 2.2, which good luck finding. Apparently you can do it, but it's not easy. So what I end up doing is I just take the regular brass, the 2.5, and on a belt sander, literally by hand, I just turn it slowly and then gently test it in one of the liners, so I don't overdo it. So not very scientific, but you know, it gets the job done. The only thing I would add though is people talk about like making a jig or something. So this is my original thing. I used to like stage the knife on this, and it just never quite worked out. And then I switched over to just basically building it on, I use 2 layers with toothpicks. So you drop your tools on your spring, and then the reason it's 2 layers is because once the knife is put together down, what I'll do is I'll take the brass and actually I'll hold it and push it through. So I push the toothpick all the way through and can feed that in. And then you're always going to end up having to put some sort of pressure on the spring, but it's a much easier for some reason when you do it this way. Like my early videos, you probably see like my hands are all cut up. It's because I used to just do it by hand, and it was just a challenge. And everyone's got their own method, but I've just found that doing it on this foam using these toothpicks just works really well. So now I had a big problem because now that I have access to these silly things, geez, I don't know what's going to happen next. I start going even worse up the deep end. And these knives, honestly, for their cost of these, you could pop these off, these scales off, throw on like plus scales, and you've got a really neat little knife, which would at least look like a Victorinox. And honestly, it would hold up just fine. It not being a real Victorinox, that might be a little much for some people, but I don't know. They're not bad knives. And one last thing on the scales. I mean, look at these things. I mean, the same color, right? See what they did? They even cut. So they had the mold, the Victorinox molds, and then they basically blocked off the end. But it's just, I mean, it's the same plastic, like this knife right here. I broke the back scale on it, and I used one of these. I mean, it works just fine. So anyway, I got to thank Hitchpost for that one, because it's actually a really nice little set of parts that I can get now. This is the on the end of the knife. The keyring is so goofy on this though. That was like the one thing that really stood out to me, because it's so big and it just feels awkward. And but the liner itself, it's interesting. I think it's pretty much the same size. I'm pretty scientific here, huh? But the problem with the ones they use is they've got this, it really sticks out. Not that I like using the key rings on my knives that I make, but unfortunately this is just the deal breaker, because even if you put the smaller split ring on it, it just sticks out too much. But anyway, you know, if you want to get into modding and mess around, you know, these things, it's pretty good. Anyway, just some thoughts there, but really looking forward to this thing. And then I'm debating if I just, here's my other issue. This is a Southern knife that I made that I really like because of the saw. Love the saw, metal saw, not the wood saw. I don't really use those that much. They're great on plastic. But do I just throw saw layer on here? Then I'm going 3, I don't know. I think I might just stick with the traditional compact, but anyway, just never ends with this stuff. Thanks, Hitchpost. Just making me do this stuff. It's ridiculous. Anyway.